Hi, everybody. This is Kristin Beltzer, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Connect with KB. It is so nice to have you here this morning. We're talking about business, education, leadership, and all the wonderful things that connect us. I'm so happy and pleased this morning. My guest who is joining me is the 48th governor of the state of Michigan. He served from 2011 to 2018. His motto during his term and to this day is Relentless Positive Action. I want to welcome to the podcast former Michigan Governor Rick Snyder. Good morning, Governor.
Good to be with you.
Good.
Thank you, Kristin.
I'm so glad to have you with me, and I have waited for this. You've been out of office 2 years now, and you've had a busy schedule, and I've had a busy schedule, and I think the timing is perfect for us to get connected again. And I want to start by telling the listeners the Rick Snyder story.
Well, hopefully they'll stay awake. To give you the quick version of it, I was born and raised in Battle Creek, grew up in a 900-square-foot home. I had a father that was a small business person, a mother that was a homemaker. They were absolutely incredible, and they set a lot of my future. The nerd story, because I've been known as a nerd, and I'm very proud of that, actually started when I was kind of in high school. I started going to Kellogg Community College while I was still in high school. So I was going to high school and community college in parallel, taking a full load in community college my senior year, first part of my senior year in high school. And that led to me being invited to go to the U of M, the University of Michigan. And I got my bachelor's from U of M when I was 19, my MBA when I was 20, my law degree when I was 23. And I was an adjunct professor in the MBA program for several years after that. I started my professional career at Coopers & Lybrand, now PricewaterhouseCoopers, as an accountant. And I was doing valuation work and tax work. I became a partner there, and the time frame would have been in 82. So like the 80s, I was at PricewaterhouseCoopers and built a great career there, became a tax partner, a mergers and acquisition partner, actually moved to Chicago during that path. Most importantly, during that was where I met Sue. So Sue and I got married during that period, and we had our first child, Jeff. And we've been married 33 years now. So that's even more important than the career part.
Absolutely.
So what took me in the 90s is I had a chance to go out on the prairie. I joined a computer company called Gateway. And Gateway was one of the big success stories in the PC business. So when I joined the company, there were like 600 people. We grew to 13,000 people in 6 years. We went from several hundred million in sales to $6 billion. We went on the New York Stock Exchange. We became a global company, Fortune 500 company. And the great part is I worked for Ted Waite, the founder. I was the number 2 guy there and was essentially responsible for running the place. Ted's a genius, visionary, but he didn't enjoy running things that much, so he gave a lot of that to me. And that was a lot of fun during the 90s. That was a blast. We lived out in South Dakota. He eventually wanted to move the company to California around 97 or so. So we wanted to come back home. So we moved back to Michigan, came back home, and basically I went into venture capital. So my third career. So I started 2 venture capital funds here in Ann Arbor, where I'm located, $200 million funds to build young companies, to do startups, mainly from university technology, which is really crazy kind of work. That's the hardest part of entrepreneurship, I would argue, in many respects. But we built some successful companies. And so that would have been the 2000s, that period. And then eventually the governor thing came, which would be the fourth move I made. And that was because we had a broken state. And simply I wanted to give back and help people because I'd had a great career. When I went to my family, and it was a family decision in 2009. And basically said it could be a couple years running for office and 8 years in office, so it could be a 10-year investment of our lives, and did that. Was fortunate enough and honored enough to be elected twice governor of the state of Michigan. Incredible experience that changed my life, and hopefully I was able to give back to millions of people in the state. And then finished that up, and been a helper since then. I tell people this is my 5th career move. My job now is to help people. So I'm just helping people in terms of nonprofits, some young companies, some startups, mentoring some people, just a variety of things, which gives me some more time for some family activities and catching up after being governor, which was pretty all-consuming.
Well, I know that with you, and I mentioned in my opening that your motto is RPA. It's a philosophy of no credit, no blame, but rather solving problems in a relentless fashion. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Sure. That's something I've lived my whole life, but I never had a name for it. And my parents were part of it, but a person I got to give a lot of credit to that really brought it home to me because he lived it was a gentleman named Jerry Wolf. He was one of my first bosses at Coopers & Lybrand back in the early 80s. And Jerry did great client service work. He had lots of clients, and the amazing part is all kinds of good stuff always happened around Jerry, but Jerry never took credit for anything. But if somebody needed to get a problem solved, they knew who to call. It was Jerry. Even though he never tried to get the spotlight, never tried to get the attention. And I learned a lot from that. It really created an environment where problems do get solved much easier. And so as I became governor, I was living that, and I wanted to share it with others. I wanted to really communicate to others on the team and around me what's a better way to do things, because it worked in my life. And so I came up with the phrase relentless positive action, which, as you said, no blame, no credit. What's the problem? What's the solution? And be relentless in the pursuit of solutions. Recognizing that you may not solve the whole thing the first time, but don't give up. Improve it as much as you can, and then come back and work on it again when the time's right. And just stay committed to problem solving, and don't worry about blame and credit. Just get the job done.
Well, I remember that, I can remember sitting around the executive table with you and you continuing to talk about that. And I really think it frees people up a little bit, too, when they don't feel that pressure of blame, that if they do something that it might not align right where you need to be at a moment, that they're not going to be chastised for it and that kind of thing, that we all are going to make mistakes and we're going to grow from it, and we're going to be able to, see down the road that it has helped us be better decision makers.
Yeah, blame doesn't solve anything. All it does is, cause animosity and hard feelings. It's important to recognize lessons learned. So you don't want to ignore if there's something you can do better, or you can see how you can, what could have been done differently to do it better the next time. But I just don't see, value spending time on blame, because you're not spending your time on the solution then. And so many of our problems are tough problems. And that shows up in our political world today, where you find people spending all this time on blame, and they sort of view compromise as a bad thing, because RPA is really effective at getting a recognition to say, again, you may not solve 100% of the problem, but if you solve 80%, isn't that a huge step forward? And what I've always told people is if you can solve a good chunk of a problem, the next time you come back to work on it, you're going to find it's easier to work on the remaining piece.
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you just keep on working away on it. And I found that in several cases on things we did during my administration, is it might have taken several years to get something done, but you just kept on plugging away at it, and then eventually you'll get there, and it does make a difference.
Well, you also, this September, you wrote an op-ed for the USA Today talking about the need to bring civility back to the nation. And so I think that what you're trying to do is get the little RPA going across the country as well, and we certainly need it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've been passionate about civility. I started talking about that while I was in office several years ago, and included it in most of my talks, because I wanted to make the point, because it's a great concern of mine. I view the greatest threat to our country is not some external threat, and we do have serious things we need to worry about. But the greatest threat to our country is us, and the polarization that's taking place, and the animosity between people that, in many cases, might have been friends in a prior life. And this political world has driven them apart. That's not a healthy thing. You can't be the greatest country in the world if you can't get along with yourself long term.
Were there repercussions for that when you did that? What did you hear from people? You hear from there's people on both ends of the political spectrum that don't like that, and they communicate it, but that actually illustrates the point, in my view. If you look at some of the messages I got, and I can't share a number of them on the air, these are things you wouldn't say to anyone. I mean, and if you go back, if you had a personal relationship with someone, these are just unacceptable statements to make that these people are saying. And it really sends a message to say, aren't we humans first? Aren't we Americans first? And shouldn't we find ways to get along? No one's perfect. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone has a difference of views. So if you recall, when we used to work sometimes in the administration, I'd say the illustration is I viewed being governor sort of sitting at the end of the family kitchen table when we'd have to make decisions.
because you had many different views and perspectives, and you wanted to respect those. I actually think having differences of opinion is a healthy thing, as long as people do it with respect to one another, because you can make a better decision.
Do you think that it's going to be different with a Joe Biden administration?
I absolutely hope so. And I believe that looking at Joe Biden's history, and I believe a lot of his early speeches since he became president-elect reflect that, about the need to heal the country, the need to come together. We need to do more on this. It's a very unhealthy situation we have, but it's going to be harder than people think. It's not going to be an easy thing bringing people back together, and it's going to have to be based on, hopefully, President Biden and Vice President Harris, who are going to be doing a lot of outreach to show, not only in words, but in actions, about how there's common ground issues we can all work on. I mean, everybody's looking for a good, well-paying job. We need to improve aging infrastructure in our country. We need to improve education. First and foremost, we need to deal with this COVID crisis.
Do you think that, and I saw you in end of 2018, you were very welcoming to our current governor, Gretchen Whitmer, as she came into office. It was all about respect and handing Michigan off to a successor in a respectful and dignified manner, and you did that. Do you think that has helped the state of Michigan?
Absolutely, because it allowed her to get a running start more and to have better information to make more informed decisions. Again, I may not even agree with all those decisions, but I wanted to create an environment where she could have the best information and the best ability to be successful. Because the way I looked at it is, isn't that what I was hired to do? My goal is to help the people of Michigan. It's not to have a political difference with someone. So I viewed the transition as something that we were going to do well, regardless of who is the next governor, and we were going to do everything possible to create an environment for them to have early success or to have as much information and as good a start as possible, because that's what I would hope our citizens would expect of me.
Sure. When you talk about transitioning, and you've kind of done that over the last 2 years, stepped back a little bit, getting more involved with some of the things that you're passionate about, now going into probably that sixth career, and that is, you recently became a grandfather, didn't you? And what's that like?
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's relatively recent. So we had our first grandchild, a granddaughter, Hayden Kay, on November 7th, and that's just fabulous. It's one of those situations. You always hear stories about people being grandparents, and the classic line is you always get is you can have all the positives, you can have all the fun, and when you have to change a diaper, you hand it back to the parents.
Yeah.
And it's just been great, though, to watch Hayden change every day, and then be able to help the kids with projects around the house, because, I mean, as you know, young parents have a very active place, and they need help with various things. So I view it as I'm helping Mr. Fix-It. I was helping with holiday decorations and all these kind of stuff to help them out. And that's a great experience. I mean, that's what family's all about, is helping one another and watching the next generation come along. So that's been awesome.
Absolutely. As you talk about the next generation and you talk about your kids and this transition in your life, what are some of the greatest leadership lessons that you've learned and that you're passing on today?
Yeah, there's a few I would put on that list, Kristin. And again, to keep it simple, is 2 or 3 things in particular. One is we talked about relentless positive action. But another one is have a dream, a vision, a plan. People use different words for it, but have some idea of where you want to go, that you can make a difference, that really is going to mean something in your life. Set a direction and understand that may not be how everything works out, but head along that path. And as you go along that path, the second one is make a decision. Too often people avoid decision-making. And I've always said to people, not making a decision is making a decision, and you're not in charge of what's going to happen next, versus deciding this is what you're going to do. So decision-making is key. Earning people's trust and respect. And your integrity is something that's very precious. And it has to be earned. And it can be dissipated very quickly. So if people trust and respect you, it makes a huge difference. And that gets to the next point, and that's what I enjoyed being about governor. It's not about you. Recognize you're part of a team. I couldn't have done all the things we were able to do, I believe, to help Michigan by myself, and that's because we had a fabulous team, and I viewed my role as to help set that vision, and help be a good coach and supporter of people doing good work. They knew more about these topics than I did, so they were better suited to take the point and take the lead in making decisions and help them be successful. And that ties into a last thing I always believe in, and it's mentorship. I had great mentors. I mentioned Jerry Wolf. I mentioned my parents. I'm trying to mentor people today, and I have during most of my career, because how do you pass it on? The greatest things you do may be the stuff the person you helped are going to do in their lives, and recognize that.
Well, you're absolutely right. I learned so much from being on your team. I certainly, to this day, try and live RPA myself. I want to wish you continued success going forward. Please give my best to Sue and the family. I also want you to know that my good friends at the Gillespie Group and Lansing Brewing Company heard that you were coming on, and they gave me one of those nerd beers. So I'm going to toast you later today, Governor. Thank you so much for coming on with me. I appreciate it.
Great to be with you.
Absolutely. I want to thank my guest, Rick Snyder, the 48th governor of the state of Michigan. I also want to thank my supporting sponsors, Marketing Resource Group, Dowding Industries, White Law, Governmental Consultant Services, AF Group, AT&T, and the Loomis Law Firm. You can listen to all of my podcasts at connectwithkb.com. Until we connect again, go live your best life. I'm your host, Kristin Beltzer.